Okay, right. So yeah, so that was a session on CSS. Hopefully there were some things that you found useful, at the very least. There will be, of course, some homework as well. I'll mention that first, and then we'll kind of go into some Q&A. And of course, I will mention it in the chat. I will update the task on the dashboard as well, so don't feel like you have to write this down. But I was thinking for homework, because things will start to ramp up, and by that I mean we will start to actually build things. Of course, the first 2 bits of homework that we've done, hopefully some of you have found them useful as an experience or an exercise, but I really want to, I want us to start working on building things for our portfolio. But as long as, and at the same time, be patient with yourself and know that the work you make now will not be as good as the work you make 6 months from now, a year from now, and so on. I would love to show you some of the first websites that I ever made, and they're terrible in comparison to the things that I make now. And the things I make now will be terrible compared to what I make 2 years from now. But so I want this homework to take the following form. I want you to imagine that you are creating a website for a client. Now, this client can be whoever you want it to be. It can be for a real company if you want it to be. It can be a fictional company. It might even be your own company, or a company that maybe one of your friends has. Maybe you can sell the website to them at some point. But you only need to make 1 page. So you're just making the home page. And I want you to take the knowledge of semantic HTML that you've got from last week. I want you to create an outline for that company's homepage, but then I want you to take your knowledge of CSS and begin styling the page. You only have to focus on that 1 page though, like I said, so don't worry about the other pages at the moment. And then of course, whenever you're not sure how to style something, just use Google. It's your best friend. If you wanted to know how to position an element on the screen, you could just search for how to position an element on the screen, CSS, and something will appear. I'll also give you a couple of resources that I think are useful for that. And also a couple of links for further reading, just to kind of give you a bit of information as to the history of CSS and kind of how it has evolved over the years. So that's the homework. I will write all of this again and put it in the chat. I'll update a task on the dashboard. In order to kind of submit your work, it's the same way that you've done it with the last 2. You just upload the files to GitHub and submit the link. So hopefully that makes sense. And now I will take your questions. So would anybody like to speak?
Hello?
Oh, hey, I can hear you. Sorry, who is this? Just so I'm...
Yeah,
sorry.
This is Raji.
Oh, hi, Raji. Hi.
I'm fine. I want to thank you for everything. I really appreciate all the efforts you are putting to this for us to understand how you've been giving us. So I want to know something about styling the page, giving the page of the browser the height in specific. How the best way to give the height, like now, is it in percentage or view W? I mean the view height of a thing, or we should just leave it that way and continue our styling? Because I notice that whenever you start styling your element, the height of that browser doesn't care about what you are putting in. It will just continue extending as you are putting things in. So what is the best way to handle this? I just want to know. I think you get my question correctly, please.
No, I understand, Raji. It's dealing with the height is much more frustrating than dealing with the width. The width seems to work as you expect it to. The height, not so much. And there's no kind of silver bullet like that you could use and it will always do what you want, because it depends on what you want. One example that I see often is you want to make a website that maybe has a footer, but the content on the website is not very long. And therefore, you want the page to fill the entire screen, but you want that footer to stay at the bottom. There are a couple of ways that you can do things like this. Typically, they would involve doing things such as setting the height on the body and then of, say, 100%. And then there are some things where you would also set the height on an inner element. What I can do, Raji, is I will show you some code that I wrote recently that where I had to deal with this exact problem, and hopefully that will kind of give you an explanation or just show you the code that I used to solve that problem. Another way is with, as you mentioned, viewport height. So you could, if you want, as a really kind of quick and easy and a little bit dirty solution, is say if it was your body element, or maybe you've got some sort of like a main container element. I don't want to say div because I'm trying to make sure you don't use them all the time. But you could do something such as, let's just say body for this example. You could do something such as body VH100, and then that's going to fill the entire screen. And that works fine on desktops. But you'll find on mobile devices, it doesn't always work exactly as you expect it to. And maybe this is what you're already aware of, Raji, if you've done this before, and maybe that's where your question comes from. Because on mobile devices, so for example, if I show my phone, let's just go on to some generic website. So you'll see here, like if I'm on the BBC website, there are these buttons at the bottom that you typically have on most phones. Now, if you do something like 100 VH for the viewport height, those buttons at the bottom have an impact on the height, and it can become cumbersome because the website won't look the same way that you expect it to. Like there might all of a sudden be some scrolling that you have to do, even though you set it to 100 V height. So it's frustrating, and CSS, even though on the surface of it can feel really easy, like as in the stuff I showed you is really easy to do, when you start to make actual kind of semi-complex designs, you will have a love-hate relationship with CSS. Because it won't always do what you expect it to, but just know that everyone kind of experiences that. So I know it doesn't really answer your question completely, but hopefully it gives you a little bit of insight. But I will share an example with you as well. So, okay, does anybody else have any questions? And in the meantime, I will just look through to see if there was anything I missed in the chat. Okay. I doesn't seem like there are any questions. I mean, to be fair, the first session was pretty long. It was longer than I expected, I guess. But if nobody has any questions about anything, it doesn't even have to be about CSS, then we will end it there.
I have put one question in the chat.
Did you? I was going to say, I'd be surprised if I didn't hear a question from you, Hafiz. That's what I'm used to. I'm used to hearing your voice at least once. during this. I can't find the question. Can you just repeat it for me, if that's okay?
I asked in the chat like an hour ago, maybe, this before and after selectors. Even though I will read about it more, but I have seen it a lot, but I haven't been able to get the point how it works, and I have not read about it yet. Nothing.
Okay, so tell me this: what is your understanding of it so far? Like, I mean, whether it's right or wrong, what was your kind of impression? What did you think it might be for?
Well, I'm really new to this pseudo classes, and that's why it was over my head. I couldn't get the point, really. That's why I'm asking here. Maybe I will if I hear someone, maybe I will get more out of it.
Okay, no, that's all good. Now, I was just curious to know because you said you had seen it. I was just curious to know what your impression might have been. So these kind of before and after elements or pseudo elements. So they allow you to insert content onto a page without it actually needing to be in the HTML, which maybe sounds a little bit strange because so far, whenever you put content in the HTML, you have to write it in that HTML page. But what you could do, in fact, let me see if I can show you in a code pen very quickly. All right, new pen. Okay. So, right, let's imagine that we've got this. Okay. Right. Okay, great. So let me just share that screen. Sorry about this, Hafiz. Where is it? Okay. So, right, you'll see we've just got this blank screen here. And in the top left-hand corner, you can see I've got this HTML section where I've just got a div tag. Nothing inside it. Let's put something inside. So let's put hi, Hafiz. Okay, so you can see that there. Now, what we could do is inside of our CSS, we could do something like that, and then we can actually style or insert something immediately before this hi Hafiz, even though we're doing it in the CSS. So we could put something like
okay.
And you can see that appears there, and then we could do after. Maybe change that to after there as well.
Spelling.
Oops. There we go. Yeah, and then you can see that afterwards as well. You might wonder what the purpose of doing something like that is. It can be useful sometimes when we either maybe we want to. Although there are many ways you could do something. For example, let's imagine that we had a button, and we wanted to, like, you know how a button will have like an X on it or something if you're like, it's a button to close something. Maybe that X, we don't want to use the default. We want to use like a specific icon that we've found off the internet, or maybe we've made the icon and it's like an image. Sometimes you would use things like those pseudo classes of before and after to like inject something into it. It's not something you're going to use often, and but hopefully that gives you an idea of what it could be used for. It's to add something into the HTML, but through the CSS, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I will make you do an example of it at some point, so that you understand it a bit more.
Thanks, Harry.
No problem. Okay, so let's have a look. Ibrahim, from my experience, it essentially resets all default styling. I might have missed what you were talking about before, but if with regards to that, that doesn't, I mean, before and after, it wouldn't reset the styles without breaking anything. Oh, okay. If you're talking about box side and border box, yeah, it's like a reset essentially. Yeah. So you might sometimes see people do that with like the body. You might see them put margin 0, padding 0 on there, and it's just to try and reset things. So all of those browser defaults that you saw earlier, if we wanted to get rid of those completely and start with no styling, then you might kind of set some reset values at the beginning. Let's have a look. So, right, Greenwich puts, I think adaptive and responsive styling is to solve all arising problems when we build content, either for desktops, phones, tablets, TV concurrently. Am I right? Yes, you are. So, one moment. There is a distinction as well between adaptive and responsive, although they sound the same. What you can imagine is, well, firstly, when we start to look at responsive web design, we will be using responsive styling. You can think of it like this. Responsive is where the website will respond or change based on the dimensions of the screen. So if you are viewing the website on a desktop or on a mobile phone, you would be serving the same content to that user, but your CSS would have some media queries to target certain size screens. Whereas with an adaptive website or adaptive styling, you would have maybe more than one style sheet. It might be that you've got a style sheet just for mobile devices, and you've got a style sheet just for desktops, just for TVs, and so on. And then what happens is, based on whatever device you're using, it will serve that content. And it might be that you've got completely different HTML for it as well. So think of it like this. Adaptive web design would have a separate website for different devices, whereas a responsive website would just have one website that covers all of the different devices. And we tend to go with that really because it's faster and it's just a bit more of the norm these days, really. So let's have a look. Aruthran. Oh, by the way, Aruthran, I will tell you the thing, but I'll tell you outside of this. I'll just do it in the chat later. So I don't want these to be in the recordings. But yeah, did you build your Android application with React Native or Java or Kotlin? Actually, I didn't use any of those. I used something known as Ionic, which is IONIC, but I was using React code in there. It's basically JavaScript. So everything that we teach you or will be teaching you, you can not only use to build websites, but you can also use it to build the back end, and you can also use it to build mobile applications. So if that's something you want to do, we will still teach you everything you need to be able to do that. I don't know Java. I don't know Kotlin. That's why I ended up sticking with what I know, which is JavaScript. I have used React Native as well, though. And I was going to use it for the most recent apps that I built. But I ended up using Ionic because for me, the experience was a lot more seamless. There was fewer issues that I was having to debug. Okay, so Ibrahim, box sizing, border box, I do it with the apostrophe. Yeah, that's typically how people would do it. So look, before, after was widely used for CSS float-based content building due to limits of CSS before. Oh, okay, interesting. I didn't know that. So that's interesting to know that it was used for layouts, for positioning of layouts. So cool. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, cool. I will take that as a no. So a short Q&A session, but that's okay because we had a long lecture beforehand. Thank you all, everyone. I appreciate you all being here. Thank you. As some of you will know, Piero and myself will be having a Q&A session on Wednesday based on questions that you give us on our career, how we got into programming, issues that we had, imposter syndrome and how we deal with it and all of that kind of stuff. So if you think of any questions that you would like to ask us between now and Wednesday, either put them in the chat or respond to the Twitter message that Piero put out. And we'll be kind of, discussing with each other these questions. That brings us to the end of the third lecture with Stackademic. Thank you all for being here, and take care, and we will see some of you on Wednesday, and just have a good week, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.